those who were involved in making it come to life. Join us as we go behind the door.
Good evening, roomies, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Door with the Grey Rooms podcast. I am your host, Brooks Bigley, and with me tonight is Cormack Baldwin, the author of Season 4, Episode 8, entitled Without Turn. How are you this evening, Cormack?
Good. I can see about 3 feet out of my window because of the fog, so it's honestly a great day for writing horror because my entire town is just blanketed in in fog. I'm like,
yeah, that's what we say every Behind the Door. I love to find out, like, whoa, what is your weather out there? What is going on? It's perfect weather to write something or read something. Where are you located at?
I'm in Oregon, and I'm in the valley. I'm in the Willamette Valley, and so anytime there's weather anywhere, it all stagnates here, and the river fog just rolls in, and then it's like, okay, cool. Yeah, you can see like 6 feet in front of you at any given time, and it's like, I hope I don't have to go anywhere.
Right, you never find your way back. Hey, so this story, Without Turn, was a very surprise, like an ending to me. I had no clue where we were going with this, and yet I was enjoying every minute of your characters. Mike and Celia, like, you really nailed kind of this strange interaction between them, leading ultimately towards the conclusion of the story. You know, we've got this woman that, like, she's avoiding something clearly, you know, like, hey, let's go on this vacation to avoid this thing that I'm running from. And I love the way you kept it so, like, little clues are dropping as we're going along. She's talking about her death trip. They're talking about some kind of weird these beings or something that are, like, predicting people's, death, fate, and whatnot. You're bringing this idea of gods in and mixing them with humans, and then the end just got us. You got us good. This was a really fun story to listen to and to read. Where did you ultimately start to conceptualize this saga that these characters went through?
Oh, this was an argument with my roommate, actually. This all really started. I am the Mike in this situation. And it was initially, it wasn't really an argument, actually. We were talking, and she mentioned, like, I would hate living in a deterministic universe so much. What's the point of doing anything? Why bother with anything? If I lived in a deterministic universe, I would just try to die. And I was sat there and I'm like, you couldn't do that, because if it was a deterministic universe, you wouldn't be able to choose that. And we just kind of went back and forth going on about, and I was kind of like, well, I mean, if everything is fated, like, first of all, as long as I don't know what the fate is ahead of time, do I actually care?
Like having an ambiguous, just knowing it's going to end, but 20 years from now, versus knowing how.
Well, like, even beyond that, if I just don't know, like, sure, if my entire life is scripted, but no one told me, like, I'm fine with that. But then the idea of, like, actually knowing, and I'm like, oh, well, then I have to, like, do things about it, maybe? Like, how do you even interact with the world once you know that the world is actually going to go only one way? Like, do you bother? Do you fight it? Do you just kind of go, okay, enjoy the ride?
Well, you're right. And so Celia represented the side of the spectrum where she, like you're saying, like, she knows her end of her fate. And she's like, well, what the hell's the point? Like, it's just going to end. I'm just going to die. I already know the end of my path. Whereas Mike is like, yeah, but, like, so enjoy it. He's offering up that opposite side. So you really kind of got that duality there going. Neither character is in the middle, but Mike for sure was not pushing I guess his thoughts about it onto her. He seemed to be he was trying so hard to hold space for her, I feel like.
He was
doing a good job. Yeah. And she admitted, I mean, I only brought you along because you were the next available person. My girlfriend didn't want to come along for this ride. But even still, like, knowing that Mike still, to that very end, held that space where she was just a mess. She's just trying to avoid everything, and as we know about fate, you can't change your fate. It's that end path, And then of course, having it so ambiguous. What is it, like the books that these fates have written in?
Oh yeah, the little fate books, and you get something for your death that's super vague, like that gives you the location, the age, and like whether or not it's a natural cause. It's essentially what you see on a coroner's report, like unnatural, natural, accident, and it's like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do with this information?
Well, let's work our way through your story then. And I want to ask some questions, but if you either can't answer it because you're like, well, we got to leave it as is, Brooks, like it's just got to be that, then tell me that. Otherwise, if you can give us some behind the door, if you know what I mean, information here. So we know in this world that they're living in like current setting, kind of like, where you and I, live in this world there. They got cell phones, they got cars, it was planes, blah, blah, blah. But they seem very accepting that in this world that they live in, there's is it just these three fates, these three beings? Or is there multiple beings? It just seems like it's normal and she just wants to fight it.
I think the intent, at least for this, was there's just the three, and they just kind of appeared one day. And we all just kind of sat down and said, well, not much we can do about this. Like, okay, if they have evidence and they're like properly predicting things, like you can fight it for a while, but I think the vast majority of people at some point would, I guess there's almost a comfort in it. Like, oh, okay, well, as long as someone knows. So, I mean, I guess that it might be a bit optimistic to think that maybe human beings would all sit down and be like, yeah, okay, we'll agree on this thing.
Well, even Mike and Celia couldn't agree on it. When they're discussing what it is. So yeah, you could kind of get the inference that this was maybe more new in this world. This hadn't been happening for decades or centuries or anything. Because he's like, well, there's evidence to say that this is what's happening. So it does seem very new and fresh in their world. But yeah, even they couldn't agree on whether it was right or wrong. Whether it's do you embrace that and become a better person because your time is limited, or do you just say fuck it all and be a jackass? So
do whatever you want. Yell at the receptionist.
Yeah, exactly. But you did a great job at like letting then, okay, given that this is happening and given that this is just, I guess, forced acceptance in this world, how would a person deal with that? And then, of course, you got two characters. So you're like, well, how would this person A and person B deal with that? So you really were able to kind of drip that concept over these characters and then really let them fill up on that and then move around in this world and let us see what transpired. So, and just not having all these random elements happening and just weirdness happening, it really lent, I think, to just how realistic this story felt. So it really was so impactful at the end.
Thank you.
Another thing I like is how you revealed the way that like she kept getting phone calls. So it was like fate was slowly like, no, you're supposed to die.
You're supposed to be in Morgan Creek. Get over here.
Yeah, exactly. What are you doing in Los Angeles? And so, and she could see through it all. It's so bizarre that she's fighting so hard and just watching it getting closer. And she's like, no, they're not calling me about my mom in the hospital. Clearly something else is going on. And then we do know the gods can control people, I guess, because they get Mike in the end to do stuff. But so how did you had that talk with your roommate that kind of gave you the seed idea for this. How did you then start to flesh all of that out?
Well, Mike and Celia just kind of like came fully formed, which is very rarely happens in my writing, so that was exciting. Whereas essentially you just have the one person who's like, I'm going to dig my heels in. I am not going to do it. I am going to be selfish if I need to, because that is what I have to do to keep my sanity. And actually initially Mike was kind of the bad guy when I was writing it. Whereas like, yeah, he's apathetic. He's not trying to help her. But then like, now I kind of look at it and I'm like, nah, Mike's actually okay. Where initially I wanted him to be the other side of the pendulum where he's like, we're going to sit, we're going to do nothing, we give up. But yeah, no, he seems more okay in retrospect. I'm like, yeah,
he's very cool about it all. He's very just like, again, I was using the words that he was holding space for her because he wasn't per se trying to solve her problem. He was listening to her. He was just there for her. And she was in a heightened state of just what the fuck is happening? I'm gonna die and I don't want to. And she's fighting it, but it was a silly fight. She probably knew deep inside she was gonna die anyways. But this was like her last hurrah, basically. And he was there for it. Went along for it. She treated him kind of rudely at the restaurant and in other situations, and he still was just like, okay. He never bailed on her, so that was really nice. It's nice that you made him not the bad guy.
Not the bad guy in the end. Yeah, no, I think his main thing is he wants everyone to be happy. He doesn't want to hurt her, but he's also very slowly it's deteriorating. His initial, like, okay, we're just going to sit down and be calm, kind of deteriorates as she does, and he's like, I can't do this anymore. They're not even meant to be like close friends or anything. Initially, the plan was just their coworkers. I was like, yeah, she's just some guy, and I'm like, I actually have a coworker named Mike, and so then I have to think like, if I were to like be like, hey, Mike, can we run away across the country to avoid my death? I have to sit there and go like, would he do it? Would he actually do it? That's not something you ask people.
Yeah, it's a tall order for someone to go through. Exactly. And like, that wasn't even like a main focal point that you had to stick on of like, well, let's prove why he came, or let's prove what kind of person he is. I do like that we kind of start midway through, like they had just arrived at the hotel at the beginning of the story, versus us hearing her plan this, hearing any kind of situation. You got us going right away into it. So I can just assume Mike's a really cool dude. He just is like, yeah, let's do this. Let's go do that. And did he know or not know? Does everyone know their fates in this world? Because the Atropos does say to Mike, I'm gonna, you were gonna die when you were like 84, of natural causes, but we're changing that now. Did he know that?
I think so. I think, yeah, there's one line. Let's see, I have it up, so let me see if I can find it, where it's basically, she mentions that she's going to die in this certain place at this certain date, and he's offended because you're not supposed to share that kind of thing. That's supposed to be private information.
He reacted a bit in that moment. I did notice that.
He doesn't want to share his because it feels so private. But I feel like once you reach a certain point in your life, which is of course about 3 days before you die, you do kind of throw out like privacy concerns, because you're like, am I really so concerned about people knowing this fact? Because like, if I'm gonna die in 3 days, it's not really my main concern is the dying part, not necessarily the people knowing private information.
Yeah, that's funny that you bring that up. I was just reading an article recently. I'm just triggering me to think about that now and what you just said, that how a lot of people are afraid of death, right? But they're not, when you drill down into it, they're not like afraid of like not being here anymore. They're not afraid of exactly what is on the other side. It's that moment of death they're afraid of. They're afraid of whatever that pain is that they're going to experience right in that death, right? Like you just said, 3 days until you die. If I know I was going to die in 3 days, like I'm going to be scared shitless of how am I going to die on that day? How painful is it going to be? That's the thing that I'd be afraid of. Not where am I going to go afterwards? What's going to happen in the afterlife, anything like that. So it's, I wonder what then was she afraid of? She didn't seem to be afraid of what existed afterwards or anything of the sort, but it didn't seem like she was missing the world. I never heard her say like, oh, I'm gonna miss the sun on my face, I'm gonna miss the way the sand feels on my toes. It just seemed like she was mad at everything. And was that because that's how it was prior, or because of knowing her fate, like that, like we said in the beginning here, that she just didn't give a shit anymore? What's the point of anything?
I think it's kind of a mix of things. First of all, she's just kind of like, she's more mad at the fact that she has a fate than like what might happen after it. She just wants to prove them wrong, which is, I wouldn't call it a healthy coping mechanism, but I would call it a coping mechanism. If you're like, you're gonna die, you're like, okay, well, I can't do anything about that, but I'm going to make it so difficult for you for my own sake.
Yeah, it's a defense mechanism. Yeah,
Like, haha, you can't sneak up on me, Death, when I'm always thinking about you.
Even think about when, like, you were a child, right? Like, you could be sad about something. I don't know, maybe you got bad grades on something, or one of your friends at school you lost something. And so you act out, you might be rude to your parents or rude to your other friends. And, as a child, like, you're not intentionally like, well, I'm just going to be an asshole now because I'm mad. It's this weird defense mechanism that we have of, like, maybe how do you be happy despite all odds? Mike seemed to have that figured out. And maybe that was pissing Celia off, maybe he wasn't holding space, and maybe he should have been a dick right back to her, and that would have got her. I don't know. So your story is just this really cool example of, I don't know if you are into psychology or anything, but for sure the nuances between these two people trying to just figure out between each other what they are as friends, kind of why they are there together, and then what the hell is happening. It was a really touching story to me. What kind of writings do you do in general? Like, do you, I wouldn't feel like you sat down and like, I'm going to write a horror story, and then this popped out. This is cerebral horror for sure.
I know, I mostly write horror. Don't worry. don't
oh, you
worry.
do? Okay.
It's actually, I wouldn't call it an ongoing joke, but it is, I guess, a cosmic joke. I'm just incapable of writing other things. Like, I'd have to find it. I wrote a fun, like, for children humor piece, and then I was reading over it, and I'm just like, wow, you can tell I'm a horror writer. And it was like, there was nothing horrible that happened. Like, no one got hurt. But then, like, there was just descriptions of, like, the glassy eyes of dolls leering at you from the unlit toy shop, and I'm like, really, Cormack? Really, Cormack?
Well, that's cool. That's how you plug into the world, I guess. Like, when you personally yourself are, like, going out and about in the world, do you kind of look at things like, that could be scary, or this could accidentally happen over there, or you just gleefully go through your day? How does it work with you?
I'm actually very much a gleefully go through my day person. I have lived a very weird life just altogether. And I think at some point I either became desensitized or I just, like, learned to cope, and it could be both or either. Like, so I work in assisted living. A lot of the people who I've known through my life are dead. And you just kind of have to live with that knowledge. You're just like, okay, day 23, we're just going about our day, and yes, you might die today. That is the thing that might happen. I've owned a lot of animals over my life, and I'm very used to, like, okay, sure, this morning we were fine, but I might come home this morning to find the cage covered in blood, and then we're just going to have to fix that. And so, so you just kind of go, okay, things will happen. That's all right.
Yeah, you're familiar with kind of just the cycle of life and death, it seems like. A lot of people are just familiar with the abundance of life and the brightness of life, and they're not familiar with any kind of death or things ending. And that's almost sad to me if they don't understand that, because you're not getting the full scope of what existing is. You exist one day and then one day you don't, and that happens to other people as well. And if you don't even have a grasp of that, man, how are you going to enjoy anything?
Yeah, it's actually, this actually relates to the story. Oh boy. Tying things back in. It's, like, super briefly mentioned that Celia has a rabbi, and so I'm not, like, religiously Jewish. I don't attend literally anything. I occasionally celebrate holidays, but I'm not really, like, religiously involved. But there is one thing that kind of sticks with me, and that's the afterlife or lack thereof, because I grew up in, like, a super Christian town, and so there was constant talking about a lot of heaven, hell, what happens to you when you die. And that just wasn't really a concern, because it's like, I don't know what does happen to me when I die. Certainly someone else will figure that one out. But until then, I just have to keep going with what I'm doing. Like, if I hurt someone, I can't stop and be like, well, I'll help somewhere else. You have to fix your problems as they come. And I think that did influence both this story and just generally my life. Is like, I can't keep a running credit debit thing of like, how good am I being? And it's like, what will happen when I die because of that? You kind of just have to interact with the world as it happens to you. And it's, I guess, both comforting and terrifying because I don't have something like, what happens when I die? I don't know. I sometimes I think about it.
Yeah, I'm very similar that like, I mean, I my own opinions. I believe that religion it's great for the structure it offers and for the community that it offers, but it also trying to tell you what is at the end. And I don't know. I feel like that's like a fear-based way, not to control people, but kind of get people to perform a certain way. If you don't do X, Y, and Z, if you don't follow these commandments, if you don't follow these rules, then this is the consequence at the end. You're going to die. Versus just like accept that your life is a series of events that will just keep happening. Maybe there's no preordained path. It's just what continues to happen. So just deal with it as it happens. Like, don't be afraid that you'll die in 20 years or in 40 years or in 1 year, because you don't know that. But you do have today. You do have the events coming at you now. You do have the situations you're in currently. And so I do see what you're saying. And I wondered how you were inspired to write this story, other than just, I've got this idea, I've got these characters. Every author has something in them that it comes out of them as they're writing the story, and I got this inference. Maybe to me this was almost like an allegory of about dealing with cancer. Like, you're told you have cancer, you're told you've got 6 months to live. What do? You go through a range of emotion. I mean, I don't personally, this hasn't happened to me. I do have some personal family friends that have gone through certain experiences, but like that fighting of like, oh shit, I'm going to die at this time. What's the point? Versus there's other people like, oh my God, I've only got 6 months to live. So I'm flying here. I'm going to experience this. I'm going to go meet these people. I'm going to learn these things. And it's truly a dividing point. I think it's an event that really divides people. And so you handled the story so well, like throwing all these other layers over this situation of just this woman just not wanting to accept her fate.
I mean, I don't think anyone really wants to accept their fate. I think if we were to find out, like, I don't think there's a single answer where if you were to like sit me down and be like, hey, you've got this long to live, I think I'd be mad about it. Like, no matter what it was. You'd be like, oh, you're going to live until 104. And I'm like, you couldn't give me until 105? You couldn't pass that on? Come on.
Wow, you're so ungrateful, Cormack. Jeez.
Okay,
give me one more year.
Come on. And then why not 106? Why do I have to stop at 105? What's the rules here?
Right. No, I see that too, because it's like, especially for like, how young we are, that within 50 to 60 years, we'll probably find means of technology to extend life anyways. And so it seems almost unfair to then be told, yeah, but you're going to die anyways, and everyone else can keep going. That's not fair. I would be pissed about that. I like not knowing. That is true.
Yeah, I'm a bioengineer in my daily life, so I'm just sitting there like, yeah, I'm the one who's deciding how long you live. No, I don't. I work in research labs. Don't worry, you're safe for now. You're safe for now. I only found out like a year and a half ago that I'm a horror writer, I guess. I guess that is what I am.
You finally take on the mantle, I see.
I have finally accepted it.
What did you think of hearing, your story in the podcast medium, hearing it as an audio acted out? How did you feel hearing it?
Okay, so I'm a huge fan of horror podcasts no matter what. I have so very many opinions on horror podcasts. And obviously The Grey Rooms is one of my favorite because I can't... Yeah. Yeah, I don't worry, there's a ranked list.
Excellent. We're number one.
That was just super exciting where I'm like, oh boy. And it's always interesting because like I can kind of hear people's voices in my head as I write or as I read things over. And it was like, the actors were extremely close to what I was imagining, and I'm like, "How did you people do this? This is
magic.
Weird. Why are you tapping into my brain?"
Well, and Gabe Templin played Mike, and Lindsay Kelly played Celia, and they have done other stories for us, and they are really good at playing like the every person. Going through the strange speculative fiction type story versus like a big giant monster or something that they're running from. So with your story, the believability of just these regular characters going through what they're going through, the situation they're going through itself, even though it was different because of there's these goddesses appearing and giving people's fates, they still lived in a normal world otherwise, went to restaurants, got served by waiters, went to museums, stayed at a hotel, watched TV. It was all the same normal stuff, so they were easy pick, I think, for us. Like, we're going back to Gabe and Lindsay for this one.
Normal people, here you go.
Right. Because, we'd pick someone else if you had a bunch of monsters and jump scares, in your story. Someone that was just more like, kind of stuff. Or someone that was really evil, anyways. Yeah, so it was fun to have them. This was a really fun, dialed down story that you didn't need to have a bunch of crazy shit coming off left and right and sound effects everywhere going down. Although in the end, I love how Jason did the voice for Atropos. It's like she almost had this like floaty, watery kind of vibe to her. How did you write that character, by the way? Like that whole concept of the tapestry and the weaving and like the ideas she was giving out. Okay, there you go. There you go.
Like I'm just talking about my hobbies.
But just like your concepts for those goddesses, I keep calling them goddesses because I think someone's referenced them that way. Yeah. But these fates, these three fates.
Yeah, they're based on, or at least they're named after the fates of Greek mythology. Although I mentioned the Norns as well. So they're just kind of basically all of Europe has a single idea of how fate works, and it is people with string. And so I'm very glad that you can, traipse across an entire continent, and everyone's just like, my worst fear, old women with string. Can't do it. I used to be a huge mythology nerd. Now I just have enough to criticize the Thor movies, and that's why I'm not allowed to watch Marvel movies. So part of that is, I guess, the deep primal fear of women with string, and the kind of is the only people who the gods in Greek mythology, and this is also true of Norse mythology, and I can't speak too much to other places, but the only people that they are afraid of are the fates, because the fates don't care. The fates do not care what they are doing. They decide the fates of the gods just as they do random peasants. So
yeah, that's the vibe I got with Atropos. Am I saying right? Atropos?
I actually don't know how to pronounce the
Atropos.
I don't know how to pronounce the initial Greek, which is I suppose I should preface I was a huge mythology nut to mostly Irish and Norse. So I can, if you want to get the nitty gritty of Old Norse pronunciations, I can do that. But honestly, Greek, we should be glad I don't say Penelope instead of Penelope. We are at scraping the bottle.
All right, we'll just tell people to go Google.
Yeah, no, I say Atropos, but that was because of one of my favorite short stories is Come Home to Atropos, and that was how the narrator of the audiobook pronounced it. I'm sure there is an actual pronunciation and people actually know it, but I don't know what it is.
We'll figure it out later.
Probably should.
We'll call up Google and ask them. So I got from Atropos's character that, like you just said, she wasn't mean or evil or I'm gonna take your soul and kill you and threaten you and throw lightning bolts at you. It was just a very no, you're going to die. You did this, but you're not. You can't run away. You're such a silly human. We're gonna make everything the way it. She was just so metered. She's talking down to some kids. You think you're gonna stay up late tonight, but you're not. You're going to bed on time. I'm gonna make sure of it. And she's not yelling at Mike or Celia. Not evil at all. So I really liked. That she was so powerful in her presence, telling basically this is it for both of you now. Oh, I'm killing Mike too because why the hell not?
Well, you can't walk away from that and be like, oh, by the way, my friend got shot by a goddess. Yeah, you can't walk away with that.
And how cool though that you had that subplot of. Was it in Rome? It was it was a prince.
Oh yeah, the newest prince of I think England. Yeah, because I mentioned the Queen of England later. Yeah,
I don't know where I got Rome from.
Yeah, they just had this kid, and there's going to be this whole big thing about we're going to find out what their fate is, but no one gets to find out about it. And I think that got edited out. Initially, I had Celia mention something like they're only doing this for the media frenzy. Like, if they're not going to tell anyone, like, they're just doing it to get attention. And I'm like,
well, I already got that inference. Just the way that it was announced, by the newscaster, in the story. I already got that inference of like, oh wow, look at this royal family trying to make a big like, hello everyone, look at us. We're gonna tell you our fates. We're so important. You want to know what our fates are. So I totally got that just in that tiny little snippet of the story. But I was gonna say how cool then that. So you confirm there's only these 3 fates basically for this whole planet, that all these people that are taking, but one of them is like, no, we're gonna leave this prince baby because I gotta go take care of this woman named Celia that thinks she's gonna get away from me. We gotta squash that right
we don't
now.
do that.
So
Yeah. I'm concerned now because I suppose I accidentally left up to fate what happens to the newborn prince, because the thing is, if Atropos isn't there, no one decided his death, so he might be immortal. There might be another story here. We might
got a
have
sequel
another
on your
thing.
hands, and he'll go hunt down the 3 fates, and he'll end it for I don't know, whatever.
He never died. It was never written.
He never received his fate. He's the fateless one.
He's so powerful now. He is coming for us, and I am afraid. That was all. The Celia and Mike thing was just to distract you. We're secretly talking about the prince the entire time.
Season 5 of the Grey Rooms, come back. Well, hey, as we draw to a close here, I wanted to see if there was like websites, social media, anything that people who are interested in your writings can find you on the internet. Any opinions that you share anywhere or anything of the sort?
Oh, I'm horrible at social media, so I'm just going to apologize to anyone who's like, I would like to say hello to him. Not necessarily that I don't want to talk to you. I would love to talk to you. I'm just constantly distracted and doing other things. If you want to find a list of my work, I do have not like a cool official website. I have just a card. So cmbaldwin.cards, CARRD.co. And it just has a list of things where you can find me. You're actually, if you seriously want to interact with me, the one thing that I do monitor is the editing project I do, which is Archive of the Odd, and that's easier to find on Twitter and on websites, and you can probably work backwards. I don't mind. Since I'm the social media person, it's not like you're going to be confusing the other editors. You will only get me, so you are safe there.
Is this a blog, or is it what is it?
So Archive of the Odd is let's see, its official definition is an anthology magazine of stories in unusual formats, which is always difficult to explain because it's not necessarily things like experimental writing, although I guess it is in a way. But it is stories in the forms of, there's the most basic ones, epistolary, so letters, journals, things like that. But then we also have in the main zine, which just came out on the 15th, we have an article in Teen Vogue, I think is the probably the most understandable one, I guess. And then we have academic writing in a film journal, incident report about people sinking to the bottom of the sea. So it's all things where it's kind of documents where you would read on a daily basis. It's not meant to be read as a story. It's meant to be read as something like you're going about your day and then you find this article and you're like, let's find out what this is. Actually, yeah, one of them is what's the word now? I'm forgetting the word. 1 second. Listicle. That's the word. It's called Click Me, and it's 120 reasons that you aren't human. And
I love those.
Yeah.
Tell me more. Why am I not human? I already knew this, but
we
go
have
ahead.
to find out now. And it actually, part of the problem is that you kept on ignoring the listicle, and this wouldn't be an issue if you had just clicked the listicle the first time, but here we are, 120 reasons later. That one is by Rachel Rodman, and I cannot pick favorites in my zine, but yes, there is a listicle.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to check that out, definitely. And all you listeners too. I mean, come on. Cormack is a very busy person. You gotta check all this stuff out. This is pretty cool.
Sure, thank you.
Well, it was great of you for joining us tonight. I do appreciate you taking the time to sit and chat, and I thank you for sharing your world with us here in the Grey Rooms.
Thank you. It was really nice talking to people about my views on death, which is not something I get to do on a daily basis.
Maybe if everybody got together and did that more, we could appreciate life.
It's just like a book club, but for your death.
But for death, exactly. Well, as usual, the biggest thank you goes out to our fans and followers who listen daily and spread that good word of Bob. May you languish, lament, and loathe, but always with love. # stay gray. Take care and enjoy your evening, Cormack.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. And good night, folks. Bye.
Join us each week after every episode for another edition of Behind the Door.